You don't remember how it all began. Perhaps you were born into a family too poor to feed you. Maybe you were an orphan, plucked from the filthy streets by men looking for children just your size. Or perhaps, in the cruelest twist of fate, you were sold. The story is different for every sweep, but the ending is almost always the same. A life of soot, pain, and an early grave. The morning comes before the sun rises. The room where you sleep isn't really a room, just a dark, damp corner of a crowded tenement. The air is cold, and the blanket you've wrapped around yourself is so thin it feels like paper. You haven't eaten since yesterday morning, and even that was just a crust of stale bread. Your stomach growls, but hunger is an old companion by now. You barely notice it anymore. A gruff voice jolts you awake.
Get up, boy, I won't be waiting.
It's your master, the man who owns you, though he would never call it that. He paid for you, and now you're his property, as much as the brushes and the sacks he carries. His temper is sharp and his hand heavy. You've learned not to cross him. You stumble to your feet, pulling on your ragged clothes, too big for your thin frame. Your tiny, frail body isn't an accident. Masters prefer you this way. Small children like you are perfect for chimney sweeping, not because you're willing, but because your tiny frame can fit into the impossibly narrow flues of London's homes. Most chimneys are no more than a few inches wide, spaces where adults could never hope to go. The smaller you are, the better. You've heard of boys who were deliberately underfed, their masters ensuring they stayed small enough to climb even the tightest spaces. Growth is the enemy here. Once you're too big to squeeze into the chimneys, you're no longer useful. It doesn't stop at hunger. Some masters are crueler still, forcing children to sleep in soot-filled sacks or dousing them in water during the winter months. It keeps you weak, keeps you small, keeps you dependent. Your tools are thrust into your hands, a brush, a scraper, and a sack to collect the soot. There's no breakfast, no kind words. There's only the cold morning air as you march through the foggy streets of London, your bare feet stinging on the cobblestones. The parish arranged this apprenticeship. It was their duty to reduce costs, and placing orphans or paupers like you with a trade was an efficient way to achieve that. The master sweep was paid to teach you the craft and its mysteries. But you quickly learn that this is a polite way of saying you are to be his labourer, his tool. There were others like you, boys who had been sold or handed over. Some came from the parish, like you, placed here by guardians, looking to save a few shillings. Others were sold outright by their parents. You've overheard the masters talking, bragging about the price of a child. 7 shillings for one boy, 4 guineas for another. You wonder how much you cost. Was it enough to make you worth the trouble, or just enough to make you disposable? Your first stop is a tall townhouse in one of the wealthier parts of the city. Smoke curls lazily from the chimneys above, but you know they're clogged with soot. The master sizes up the house and turns to you.
Up you go,
he barks, pointing to the chimney. His voice leaves no room for argument. You step into the fireplace, your heart sinking as you look up into the black void of the flue. It's narrow, so narrow that even your small body will have to twist and contort to fit. You feel the rough push of the master's hand on your back.
Hurry up,
he snaps, and you know better than to hesitate. You climb. The darkness swallows you almost immediately. The air is thick with soot, so heavy that every breath burns your lungs. You cough, but there's no escaping it. Still, you can't afford to hesitate. If you become too sluggish, he might send another boy up behind you. This boy carries no tools, only sharp pins, which he jabs into your feet or your legs to prod you higher. And if you were really slow, the master might light a fire under you. Literally. When you finally reach the top, the faint light of day greets you, but there's no time to rest. You slide back down the flue at speed, landing in a pile of soot at the bottom. But the master is already shouting.
Bag it up!
He orders. The soot is valuable, worth 9 pence a bushel. You shovel it into sacks, dragging them to the master's cart or yard. This process repeats 4 or 5 times a day, each chimney as grueling as the last. But you keep climbing. You have no choice. For 7 long years, you are bound to the master, your life tied to the chimneys you clean. If you survive, you will become a journeyman sweep, free to work for a master of your choosing. You've heard of the boys who didn't make it, ones who got stuck in chimneys too narrow, suffocating before they could be pulled free. Others fell from great heights, their bodies broken on the hearth below. Some died from burns, unable to escape a sudden chimney fire. And even then, age doesn't guarantee freedom. You've seen the master coughing up blood, his body wrecked by years of breathing the filth. Some older sweeps develop painful tumors. Chimney sweeps cancer, they call it. But that future feels as far away as the light at the top of a chimney. For now, all you know is the dark, twisting flues and the sharp, barking voice of the master.